The test will begin on the word start. On your mark, get ready, start.
Welcome to We Regret to Inform You, a college admissions podcast by students for students. I'm Saad.
I'm Justin.
And I'm Connor.
This week, we will be talking about ACT and SAT dates and how to prepare and what times you need to take them to not be late for your deadlines.
This week is also officially off the cuff week. So
yeah. Basically, what we're doing this week is we are going to have a little bit of a 3-week, I believe, hiatus after this because someone's going on vacation. So, basically, we just decided that we need to record.
Not 3-week. It'll be a 1-week hiatus, but we've had a 2-week hiatus since the last episode. It'll be like a week and a half, man. I don't know.
Either way, he's going on a vacation. We're going to record. Yep.
All right. I mean, okay. So we're going to have a little bit of a hiatus, so we just decided to record this podcast instead of having a super, super long hiatus. So we'll be back soon, but we just decided that we need to get this episode out.
Yep. So this week we are going to be talking about standardized testing. I know this is kind of late for standardized testing, but there are tons of test dates still coming up. All the way, actually, for tons of standardized test dates coming up that you can still register for and take if you still need to get those done or improve your scores. So first we're going to start off by talking about the upcoming dates that you can possibly register for. Starting with one coming up very soon. You should actually be registered for it now. For I'm going to start with the ACT test dates.
Mm-hmm.
So the registration dates have already passed for this one, which is the July 14th one. Or no, actually, the number registration date is tomorrow, June 15th, for a July 14th
You can still register.
ACT. You can still register.
You have to pay like $20.
You have to pay extra.
By the time this episode comes out, you will have to pay extra money.
Yeah, so you'll have to pay extra. The registration deadline is a June 22nd for a July 14th ACT. After the July 14th ACT, there is one, I think in August, but I don't have the date for that. There's one September 8th, at the end of October, one in December, and that'll be the last one that you should take. So remember for the ACT, the last one that you should take before EDing is probably September 1 for early admissions. So
just remember, if you're applying early decision, the last possible test date you can take it in is November. No.
October, but
October
for the ACT, it should be
November for SAT. But we recommend you get it done beforehand so you're not like, you didn't get like a 200 and you're like scrambling to get a test score out. So just the last date you can take it is in a couple
depending
months.
on the college. Yeah, so depending on the college, you want to take it like at least a month before your stuff is due.
Mm-hmm.
So for early decision, that would be November, or
that
would be October. At the beginning of October, you would want to have it done. So just remember like the 1 month rule. SAT has one at the beginning of every month from here until November as well, or December as well. So the last day for regular decision would be at the beginning of December. The last day for early decision would be at the beginning of October.
Basically, our recommendation is that you take the ACT in July and SAT in August if you haven't yet, but obviously there exist dates past that in case for some reason you can't do those two. But those would be the two best if you just happen to have not taken it yet.
Yeah, and also it's also important to note that the SAT subject tests, not every single one is offered every single time. So if you want to take a specific SAT subject test, you need to make sure that you find which dates that's offered on and make sure you register for that in advance.
And also remember that you cannot take the SAT and the SAT subject tests on the same day.
Yeah, you can only
they are scheduled on the same day, but they will not let you take them on the same day.
You can only take, 2 subject tests?
You can only take 2 subject tests.
No, you can take 3. I took Math 2, U.S. History, and Physics all on the same day.
Yeah.
But you don't want to do that.
I mean, it's ideal to
it
spread them out,
depends.
but yeah, you can.
You want to take
them
them right after the class, but obviously
all.
it's
Yeah,
too late for
I mean,
most
for me, I
juniors at
took.
this point.
I finished all those classes this year, so I was just like, okay, I'm gonna take the subject tests. Hopefully, I did well. I don't know until July. Also, if you take the Hebrew subject test, please comment because I don't know why that's even a subject test. I looked it up
But Latin.
on the SAT subreddit, and the top comment on the discussion was, "Does anyone even take this test?" And it had like 3 upvotes. So
You know, maybe
please
maybe
comment
you
if
set the
take
curve.
Hebrew subject test.
Yeah, maybe you set the curve if you take it, so you automatically get 800.
Maybe
Yeah.
Nobody
maybe
knows.
they have a version of the original Bible and they just want to read it. Like the
literally,
first
literally
Bible.
nobody knows. Yeah, it's the first Bible, and we haven't actually translated it yet, so we need some Hebrews. No,
All right, that was the reason I was participating in this episode. I just want
We're
to know
off the
who
cuff,
takes
okay?
the Hebrew subject test. So, what's the next topic? How to prepare for
how
these,
yeah how should
basically?
you even how should you prepare, Connor? How should you prepare for these subject tests?
Subject tests basically. You guys can correct me if I'm wrong, but my advice: take a full year course in the subject test, and then take the subject test, either right after finishing the class or right before finishing the class. For me, basically, my classes don't finish until June 22nd, and the SAT subject test dates were obviously earlier in June, so I kind of had to take it while we were still learning. But luckily, in the AP classes, we had already finished the AP curriculum, so that was fine. And Math 2, I had already been studying for.
Okay, so Connor, I have
And
a
also
question for you.
take practice
Connor.
tests.
Yeah.
Yes.
Practice tests are a very good gauge.
Question for you, Connor.
Yeah.
Did you take AP Physics?
I took AP Physics 1. I'm taking AP Physics 2 next year.
Okay, when you took AP Physics,
Yep.
did you take the AP Physics test?
Are you gonna ask me about the AP Physics tests?
No, I'm just saying, did you
Okay.
take the AP exam for
Yes, I did.
Physics?
I did.
Okay, compared to the SAT subject test, how do you think they compare? Which one's easier? Were they about the same?
So the AP exam has a lot more esoteric questions because you're expected to know less material but more in depth. And then the SAT 2 physics test is more straightforward, but you have to know a lot more content. So, for example, on the SAT subject test for physics, there was one question about calculating the interference of light in a double slit experiment, and you had to do some sort of calculation to figure out an exact answer. I just did not know how to do that. But that type of calculation thing is pretty much what you'll be seeing on the SAT subject test. There's some calculations. There's a bunch of easy understanding questions. There's even some history questions about. There was one about Einstein or something.
So Connor,
yeah.
I kind of want. So
on
can
the
I just?
AP, yeah, go for it.
Can I just kind of like sum up kind of what you're saying is that
Mhm.
basically the AP test is more nuanced?
The
Right?
AP test is definitely more nuanced. They will try to trick you on the AP test.
And for anybody wondering what esoteric means, it's intended for or likely to be understood by only a small number of people with specialized knowledge or interest. Okay, so basically, how should we prepare for these tests, Connor? How should we study, for example?
Physics subject test or other subject tests.
In general, for everything.
In general, for subject tests. My friends and I, what we would commonly do is just buy a practice book, and don't buy the book that is for the AP exam. Specifically, buy it for the SAT subject test, because they're very different beasts. Just
sounds like a really fun group of friends you got there. Connor.
Yeah, it's great. Take a look through it. Do the practice tests in it, and honestly, as long as you understand the wide breadth of material at a basic level, you should be able to do fine on the subject tests for most any subject.
Justin, how important are certain scores? How important are your SAT and ACT scores versus your subject test scores versus your writing scores?
It really depends on the school. So something that's really good to look up is the Common Data Set, and that'll have all that information in it. Some schools don't publish this, but most do. And it'll literally tell you like how they consider this. Like it's something published by the admissions office, and they'll say, so how important, like there's a box where it says how important is the SAT subject tests. It'll say considered or very important or not considered at all, and then you can tell directly from the Common Data Set whether it's important or not.
What you want to do is, like, if you want to go to UChicago, you search UC Chicago Common Data Set.
Actually, I think that's an exception. I don't know if they publish theirs.
Okay.
There's a couple colleges that don't actually publish their data sets.
All right. UT Austin. I was just looking at this one. UT Austin Common Data Set. You search that. So it'll pull up a site with a bunch of PDFs depending on the year you're talking about. Yeah. Choose the most recent year. It'll have a 40-page long thing. You might want to skim it, and you can get to a point where they talk about in that certain like graduating year what qualities of an application they considered. Yeah.
So there's questions. It'll be like, is your race considered? And it'll tell you that. Is your status, your religion considered? It'll tell you that. There are tons of categories that it'll tell you, like directly up front, not with any statistics, not anything hard to understand. It's just up front, like, is it considered?
It'll tell you whether it's required, considered, recommended, or just not considered at all.
Yeah, and some of these common data sets, like the importance of these cannot be overstated. Even for just the testing, really, but not even just testing.
It applies to everything.
It's important for everything. So you go into
everything from your GPA to your class rank. Yeah. Like if you look at UT Austin, your class rank is required, but your GPA isn't considered at all. So those are important things to know when you're applying to a college. You want to know what exactly they consider, require, and recommend for your school.
Yeah. So not even just the UT Austin. That's not even just an outlier. Tons of schools have really important things that you can only learn from the Common Data Set. So, for example, in Notre Dame, the only thing that is considered very important, which is the highest, the most important category, very important. The only thing that's considered very important is the rigor of secondary school record. There are tons of things that are important. Almost everything is important to them, but the rigor of secondary school record is very important. So that kind of tells you how much they consider. So you need to be taking, if you want to go to Notre Dame, you need to be taking the hardest classes that you can possibly take, because that's what Notre Dame looks at.
So there are some colleges that require the subject test. There are not very many of them at all. Some colleges like Caltech, Harvey Mudd, and MIT, they just outright require you to have 2 subject tests. They often recommend what test you take for those specific colleges. It'll probably be like the Math 2 and like a science like biology or chemistry. Some of the schools like Cornell, for example, require you to submit to take SAT subject tests if you're doing arts, sciences, or engineering. So just look up your specific school. Yeah. More than likely, it won't require you to take a subject test, but a lot of
schools also recommend it.
Yeah, a lot of schools recommend it.
The importance of recommended things is heavily debated. I'm not going to weigh in on that debate because I don't know. But, for example, Brown says that they recommend SAT subject tests.
And quick shout out, if you're going into a STEM field and you're trying to decide which subject test to take, even if your university doesn't require you to take Math 2, one of the subject tests that you take should be Math 2, just because, like, every university is going to want to be able to see and compare your math skills. So,
speaking of things that colleges consider important or not at all, one of those major things that schools consider is the writing portion. So most of the schools that we looked at said, we don't consider the writing portion at all, or we barely consider it. But there are a couple schools, for example, Brown, that use it to actually consider whether or not you are a good applicant. So
if I remember correctly, there are actually quite a lot of schools that require you to have a writing test.
Right. Lots of schools require you to have a writing, but lots of them don't use it for actual lots of the schools don't actually use it to decide whether or not you'll be admitted. They use it for placement or for verifying that your writing skills actually match up to what you got in their essay. So it's sort of like they either use it as a verification check for your essay that you submitted for admission, or they don't use it at all. That's sort of what it is.
An important note, because if you're listening to this podcast, you probably are applying here. All of the University of California schools, they require the ACT or SAT you submit to have a writing on it. Even if you submit one with a writing and one without a writing, they will not consider the one without a writing. The only ACT or SAT score they consider is one you took with a writing. So make sure you have a high SAT score with a good writing score.
This is perhaps more of a personal thing, but can I get like a source on where it says that Brown heavily considers your ACT
It's in their
or SAT writing score?
They don't heavily consider it, but they do consider it an admission. So not many schools consider it an admission, but Brown does consider it.
Okay.
So it's in their common data set that they consider it an admission. I don't know if they consider it heavily because
I'm on their common
they don't
data
say
set
whether
right
or not.
now, and there's a portion called section C9 where it lists all of the like average or median SAT and ACT scores.
Yeah,
and
it's not in there. They don't. You have to scroll up more. So scroll up to C8C.
Okay.
So scroll up to C8C. Yeah. So for the SAT writing, there are a few categories for admission, for placement, for advising, and in place of an application essay as a validity check on an application essay. No college policy as of now, or they don't use it.
All right. So the common data set is super important. Look at them. Thank you.
Yes, they are the most important thing that you should look at for the schools that you're applying to.
All right,
What's
guys.
the next
Let's
topic?
talk about some college admissions news.
Uh,
So U Chicago, or as we affectionately call it, UC Chicago,
Of
is
course.
now test optional. You do
Holy
not have to
crap.
submit.
And
a
they no longer
test.
consider the interview. So
They
that's
no longer
amazing.
consider the interview. So U Chicago is now test optional.
And
We
we're
don't
still
know.
not getting it.
We have no clue what that means.
Yeah. On that note, this podcast is now content optional.
Yeah.
So,
we
how-
have
I don't
nothing to
know what-
talk about
What could
this.
that mean? What could
Our
that
next
mean?
episode will be 20 minutes of silence.
No, it won't. We promise.
So
He does. The rest of us
Yeah,
don't.
nobody
should
really
we come
knows
up-
what
should we
going
come up with
test optional
conspiracy
means.
theories
It
about
could.
what this means? Because there's a lot of people on the subreddit talking about
So
how
okay.
that they wanna
So
decrease
basically, there's a
their
few.
admissions
There's a
percentage.
few things going around. People think that it's all a scam to try to reduce their application or their admission percent. There's some people that say, well, historically, colleges that go test option only increase their applications by about 5%, so it wouldn't really matter. Also, the U.S. News ranking only considers selectivity as like 1% of their formula. So why would they try to reduce their percentage? And then there's other people that say, well, people are disadvantaged by the SAT, ACT, like poor people. Underrepresented minorities are also disadvantaged by it because they don't have the same amount of money to be able to afford the ACT, ACT, or something like that. So I don't know. We don't really know what it means.
there are situations where people from low-income situations can only afford to take the test
That's
like
not
once.
that doesn't
and
make
other
sense. That
people
doesn't
have-
make any sense. Actually, that does not make
What?
any sense to me because
What?
there's fee waivers.
Yeah, there is fee waivers.
You can have what like
Does it waive the
three.
entire cost?
You have 3 fee waivers.
Plus, if they don't have the test, then low-income students don't really have that much else because they don't have as many like opportunities to do other stuff as higher-income students do.
But do fee waivers work
Nobody
like
knows.
100% of the time? If someone applies for a fee waiver and they actually need it, do they actually get it? I mean, this is more of like a.
I guess
This
it's.
isn't on topic anymore.
I don't know. I don't know because I've never had to use a fee waiver.
Yeah. Okay.
But yeah, there's a whole list of benefits that you get for using a fee waiver. So you get 2 free SATs, 6 free SAT subject tests, 2 free QASs, unlimited school reports, waived application fees at lots of colleges, free CSS application profile, fee reductions for score verification.
And free full ride to UC Chicago.
Well, everybody gets a free. If you're not applying for financial aid, that doesn't make sense. Even if you know you're gonna get denied, like you might as well
Yeah.
apply. So basically, this episode summarized. So take it off.
I have more things to add.
Okay.
So
Go
I made a
for it.
post. I made a post on the subreddit a day or two ago that was students who were rejected from every college they applied to. What did you end up doing? And what I learned from this is just a very important bit of information that I'd like to pass on to the rest of you. Make sure you have a safety school that you want
Not
to go
safeties. make sure you apply to schools where you know you have a great shot of getting into, where you know
Make
you'll
sure
get
you
into
have
them.
safety schools and backup schools. Both schools where you have an above 80% chance and schools where you have a 100% chance of getting into.
So find a school that you love, but also
that
a
you
school
love.
that you love, but also that you can get into, that you know that you'll be able to get into that school, but you love it, so you would want to go there.
So that you're not disappointed when inevitably certain schools reject you, because that's what happens. It's the name of our podcast.
If the only reason you aren't applying,
It's a sad truth.
If the only reason you aren't applying to your state school is because of the prestige and you like it otherwise,
You're doing
and
it wrong.
You feel
You're
like
doing
you should
it
go to a more
wrong.
prestigious university, apply to your state school as a safety, because you'll probably regret
Not even
it
just your state
otherwise.
school. Apply to local schools.
Yeah.
Because you're doing
Apply
it
to
wrong.
regional schools.
You're doing it wrong if you don't.
Thanks for listening to We Regret to Inform You. We'll be back in like a week or two with an actual
Wait,
planned
are we ending
podcast.
it like
Let me plug my website real quick, ethicalmindtoday.com. It's about philosophy, moral philosophy, and ethics in today's world.
I'm also gonna plug a website. I'm making one. It's called kmgs.co. It's not actually up yet, but I bought the domain name and it's going up this summer. So be on the lookout,
I'll plug
fellas.
our website.
Oh yeah.
That too.
I'll go ahead and plug our website, which
Can we-
is
can we-
rtiypodcast.weebly.com, and our Patreon, which is patreon.com/rtiypodcast. And also, we'd like to run an idea by you. So we're thinking of a new segment. We don't know whether it's going to be a segment or its own episode, although based on how many ideas we have for episodes, we'll probably make it its own episode, called We Regret to Profile. Which
Didn't we do this
admittedly-
last time?
No, we did. We told it to the subreddit.
Oh.
So we have a new segment called We Regret to Profile, which admittedly sounds like the life story of colleges using affirmative action, but whatever.
Which is illegal in California.
yes.
So we have a new segment called We Regret to Profile, in which we will essentially create profiles of colleges. And no, we will not be doing Ivies, because everybody knows everything about every Ivy. We will be doing state schools and underrated schools.
What about Brown?
We will
Schools
be
that- no.
doing Brown.
Yeah, we will be doing Brown.
You
so,
are being vetoed on Brown.
yeah,
We will be doing
vetoed.
Brown.
We will be doing Brown.
All right, so each of us have 33% stake in this operation. You have been overruled.
Yeah.
No.
So by
I have 50. You each have 25.
No, you actually.
Okay.
In which case, it still does not matter.
We
because we're
each have
still-
30 and Lemon has 10.
Yeah.
Lemon? Okay, sure.
We bought Lemon out. So.
Okay.
Anyways.
Okay,
Thanks
let
for
me-
listening.
Let me
Discord
explain this, please, before somebody comes into my room because I'm yelling.
We should discard this whole episode.
We'll discard most of this episode, yes.
No.
Okay.
Keep it all
so-
in. Call it We
We're
Regret
making-
to Uncut.
Call it X-rated. We regret to agree.
Untamed
So-
and uncut. Okay. Thanks for listening. We'll see you.
No.
when we see ya.
I have to actually talk about our new thing.
Make sure you mention Brown because you got overruled. Make sure you say that you got. Make sure you say that we're gonna profile Brown because you got overruled by Justin and Connor.
Yes.
Actually, say my full name, Justin Peterson. Make sure you say my full name.
Also, we're renaming this podcast to Brown University Regrets to Inform You. So
Yes.
that's also a
Okay. So we'd also like to talk about one of our new segments on the podcast, which we'll be rolling out hopefully on our next one, which is called We Regret to Profile, in which we essentially create profiles of colleges. No, we will not be doing Ivies except for Brown because Connor and Justin have overridden me on that decision. But we will be
true.
making profiles on, the admissions difficulty and the culture, all the different aspects that you consider when you're going into a college, location, the city, all that kind of stuff. We'll be creating concise, comprehensive profiles on those colleges so you have an easier time looking.
Thanks for listening to We Regret to Inform You. Check out the websites that we said. So ethicalmindtoday.com. What is it? rtiy.weebly.com.
and kmgs.co.
Patreon.com/rtiy podcast. Thanks for listening. We will